consumers and providers alike, teaching them the merits and the ways of natural burial. So I think what makes me most excited, I'll just say this first and foremost, is that, you know, we are a nonprofit international organization, and we've been in operation since 2005. We are actually, our home base is actually out of California, but we are based in the United States, and we can help service individuals far and wide. And we have some interactions and some certified providers in Canada, and we would love to see the same in Mexico and in Latin America. So I do want to thank Wilka for this opportunity. So the group knows who the Green Burial Council is. We are a twofold organization that represents not only the funeral industry, but the consumers as well. So we are what is called a C6 certification organization, meaning that we are the standard bearer in the industry, holding the standards of natural burial to a level that people have to attain and maintain to be part of our network. It's very important to hold certain standards, not only for the purity of the movement, but for the consumer themselves. And then our C3 arm of the organization helps consumers and helps educate people far and wide. So it's a pleasure to be here, and it's very exciting as well because we actually want to see growth, in particular in your region. Part of the conversation with Wilka has been to possibly help your townsfolk and your community create a space like this. So I think the first thing that we should probably do is go to the PowerPoint just to give you a little bit of information concerning what the difference between a natural burial cemetery and a regular traditional cemetery might look like. I think that might enlighten the group a bit. And then I'm not a big PowerPoint fan, but it's necessary so that you can understand some of the specific information, but then I can get into some of the intimate details after the actual PowerPoint to make you better understand the impact it may have on your community. So Wilka, if you're ready, I'd be sure to get started on the PowerPoint.
Okay, I'm on it. Let's see.
Okay, folks, so basically, this movement has been around since the inception of time. You know, there was no other type of burial, obviously, other than a natural burial. So what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is the history of, you know, kind of what we call cemeteries or burial grounds, and a little understanding of what they are. So what you see on your screen, you know, would be what a traditional cemetery may appear as. A natural burial cemetery looks very different. It looks very natural, native state, large trees, flat markers, no use for pesticides or fertilizers, no concrete vaults, no embalming, typically no upright monuments, certainly no monuments that are polished or set in concrete. It's a very different setting, very park-like. It almost looks like your favorite nature trail. So that would be a very good example. These photographs depict what many people would associate with a traditional cemetery today. If you want to go ahead to the other slide. So the environmental impact of lawn burial. I mean, if you look at these statistics, they're pretty telling. You know, in today's modern society, unfortunately, we're guilty of a lot of excess. And also, over time, traditions have come into play that people have not questioned. Just so everyone knows, embalming is only a preservative for family members to be able to view the body, but it's not a necessity to view an individual. In natural burial, we use refrigeration and dry ice and things like that to obtain the same result. As you can see, metal caskets and things like that can create a lot of what we would consider now waste, especially in a world that we're trying to now protect in many ways. So, the philosophy of natural burial is biodegradable burial containers, biodegradable shrouds. Quite honestly, nothing at all, if that would be the choice of the individual. But anything that would go back to nature without causing any kind of harm to nature. And of course, along with any type of industry, by not exposing people to toxic chemicals and things like that, that certainly cuts down on the safety issues when it comes to individuals that, like funeral directors and people who are around this on a daily basis. You can go ahead to the next slide. So there are environmental impacts with basically every type of disposition that you could possibly imagine. This one here kind of touches on cremation. And the one thing I want to talk about cremation, and this is going to be a larger part of our conversation later during this conversation we all have, is that cremation is over 50% of all funeral disposition at this point in time. So it's not going to be something that is ever probably going to go away. But the one thing that we really want to instill in everyone is to understand what goes into a cremation, because a lot of people don't understand that there are a lot of natural resources that are needed, because a lot of people believe that cremation is a green option. It could possibly be a greener option, but as you can see, there's lots of fossil fuels, lots of mercury and other elements can be released into the air. There's a lot of carbon that is emitted. But the one thing that I want to stress here is that what we want to do is, as the Green Burial Council and as a society, is help the individuals who choose this option possibly choose a newer, greener way to find or memorialize the ashes that are created by the cremation process. So I'll get into those options a little later into the conversation. So what is a green burial? A way of caring for the dead that furthers one or more environmental aims, such as you can see, worker health, saving natural resources, reduction of emissions, preservation of habitat, but also, so everyone knows, reintroducing what we've always done, back to our community, caring for our dead in a different way, stewarding for future generations. Being part of natural burial is much greater than just the environmental aims. It's also basically celebrating a life that was lived, instead of being grief-stricken, but celebrating that life in a way that stewards and helps further conservation efforts and community resources. And eliminates, as you can see, a lot of the things that you would think would go into a traditional burial. You can go to the next slide. So in a green cemetery setting, I think the best way to put this is, as you can see, we want to have the greatest and highest form of natural decomposition possible. By placing someone directly in the earth, you allow them to go back as they have come, help nurture, and become part of a larger ecosystem. And that's pretty important, not only for the family that's left behind, but for the entire earth. We always think of sustainability and stewardship. We have to support things like land trusts or community or public spaces that could sustain this, because that's what's going to help this movement grow and help society on a whole understand and embrace the concept. So a lot of people might say to you, at what level or depth is optimum, for a natural burial? There's lots of different questions that can be asked when it comes to this. And my best answer really can, every individual location is going to vary. Certainly some climates could be more arid, some could be more humid, more wet. So as far as decomposition is concerned, a lot of that has to, depends on the actual location itself. Typically, most natural burial occurs about 3 feet, maybe 4 feet, but sometimes, different areas require different depths concerning laws or regulations. There have been extensive research and scientific studies conducted on water. That seems to be one of the largest concerns when it comes to natural burial. What I can tell you is, if you visit the Green Burial Council website, we have a very in-depth report from the World Health Organization that even includes things like mass burial or genocide. And there has never been a proven instance of any type of water contamination when it comes to natural burial. The one thing I can say, though, is that when it comes to modern practices with embalming fluids and things like that, that can't be said. So natural burial certainly has a much softer footprint and has never been proven to contaminate a water supply. Move on, Wilka. So a lot of people believe that embalming is required, or that a concrete vault is required. There is no state in the United States that requires any of these. That is a personal preference for the family themselves. There are certain rules and regulations when it comes to an unembalmed body that's not refrigerated. Typically, if a body is not refrigerated within 48 hours, it must be embalmed after the 48-hour period. But what I can tell everyone on this call about natural burial right now is natural burial does not mean fast or quick burial. As long as the body is treated with care and refrigerated, a typical natural burial occurs 3 to 5 days, sometimes 7 to 10 days after someone expires. And we've never had any type of problem or issue with that, as long as all the proper requirements are met as far as refrigeration and handling of the body. So embalming, concrete vaults, none of those are required by law, but some cemeteries may require them personally. So if you go to a cemetery and they say, well, we require you to have a concrete vault, they can say that as a cemetery, but it is not a law. So just know wherever you're at that you have the ability to do this. Public safety. Well, this is a pretty good slide to have, especially with what's going on in the world today. A lot of people will believe that an unembalmed or a body itself becomes inherently dangerous when someone passes away. That really has never been proven. If someone is treated respectfully and in a way that would be protecting anyone that would be involved handling the body, but all the microbes, all those things die within a certain period of time. So a body that has passed away is not something that would be where you have to treat it any differently than a body that's been embalmed. Of course, people have to use logic and common sense when it comes to, dealing with the dead. But most certainly, there has never been any proof concerning dead bodies that they would infect anybody. And in this COVID crisis, we've had the pleasure, but the unfortunate pleasure of helping many, many families through this. And it most certainly has not been a problem in any way, shape, or form. They were able to honor their loved ones the way they were, would want to see fit. Well, why choose green? I mean, I think that There are lots of different personal reasons someone might want to choose green. A lot of those are showing up on your screen right now. But the one thing that I can tell you is that probably the most important part is laying someone to rest and memorializing them in a way that celebrates and honors their belief system. To be surrounded by life in death is a very special thing. And in natural burial, that is probably one of the largest components, is being in a place that makes people feel good and feel happy, knowing that their loved one is there. So we have, all these wonderful things that you see in front of you that go along with it, but also know that one of the largest pieces to this puzzle is the feeling it creates for the family laying their loved one to rest in this type of setting. So this is pretty interesting, green burial reform, and what's driving that. I can tell you personally, not only with my involvement with the Green Burial Council, but because we have 5 burial preserves across the country, you will find every walk of life who is interested in this. There is no driving force when it comes to religion or economics or race or sexuality. It transcends all of that. It's really amazing to see how in such a special place, how all these individuals are brought together. And at the end of the day, what color of your skin or what religion you may have believed in really has little consequence to what that final act means to the family and what they're doing there. So you can read all these, they are very important to it, but there are no boundaries. You will find that this is a global phenomenon, and it reaches far and wide. And of course, we have the return to ritual. To be part of this, I always tell people that to truly understand a natural burial is to be part of one. If you ever have the distinct pleasure of being part of one, the light bulb goes off in your head. It is a very cathartic experience. It really truly brings you to grips with mortality, the life that was lived. Participating, being part of that process, you have a greater sense of acceptance of the passing of the loved one. So all of the items that are listed here, they really hit home with a natural burial service. There are no time constraints. Literally, when the family arrives, all of this unfolds on their own time schedule. And that's very important, because you really truly want to treat your loved ones as you've treated them while you're living, and the process itself is very important. So as you can see, I could go on and on with this, but it heals a lot of heavy hearts when you're part of one of these processes. So a new view. As you can see here, you've got a picture of a natural burial and a traditional burial, giving you some idea of depth and materials. Quite honestly, to be completely honest with the group, it's not a lot different in the sense that, a grave is a grave. The size of it's going to be very similar. It's all that goes into it that makes it so special and so different. At our facilities, we dig everything by hand. That may sound like a really arduous task, and it is, but it's incredibly important environmentally. If you're in an environmentally sensitive area, you want to be sure to protect those things, but also spiritually, to be part of something like that. If the family participates, if that's allowed, that's great. But again, it very much like the slide prior, it brings you closer to that individual. And, if we're going to talk about economics, most certainly, without the really expensive vaults and things like that, that's certainly a help. And one thing I want to touch on as well, people believe that vaults are protecting the individual that's deceased. The main purpose of a vault is to prevent the earth from collapsing once the ground settles. In natural burial, no earth is removed. It's all placed on top, and gravity pulls it back in exactly the way it came out. So that's probably one of the biggest differences between the two. But you can see here, this is a nice little example of what it may look like. Types of green burial. And this is important to the group as well, because a lot of people would believe that you have to have something that would be considered like a park-like preserve or something to have a natural burial, and that's absolutely 100% not the case. We have 3 different types of burial grounds within the Green Burial Council certification program. The very first is a hybrid burial ground. That looks like every cemetery that exists. Essentially, there are no rules or regulations concerning a cemetery not allowing a natural burial. So what we like to do is encourage these cemeteries to allow it because it really is not detrimental to them in any way, shape, or form. And it gives the families the ability to have it and maybe be close to a loved one. So a hybrid burial ground would be a conventional cemetery with a dedicated section. A natural burial ground would look very much like a forest setting, would have some deed restrictions in place prohibiting certain things like embalming fluid, non-organic caskets, vaults. And that could be privately owned or religiously affiliated. And then you have what's called a conservation burial ground. The natural burial ground and the conservation burial ground follow essentially the same exact preservation and deed restriction requirements. The largest difference between the two of those is that a conservation burial ground is either owned or run by a land trust or maybe a public entity, or it may have a conservation easement on it. So typically these properties are quite large in size, but may have larger burial requirements so that the actual impact, there may be lesser burial happening at a conservation burial ground, even though it may be a larger property itself. That would be part of the restrictions there. But all of these have their merits, and we should embrace all of them and hope that every community would be lucky enough to have any or all in them. So growing demand. Well, I think the best way, and you can see what we've got here, I think the best way to really sum this up is the practitioners who are actually out there doing it and what they're seeing. I can tell you this, natural burial 10 years ago, I started in 2007. It was barely crawling along. About 5 or 6 years ago, we stood up and started to walk. Now it's off to the races. And a lot of that has to do with public awareness. Years ago, it used to be a special customer who was actually seeking out a specific type of disposition. Now that this has become a little more mainstream, where more everyday individuals who could be very environmentally conscious, but maybe that's not entirely at the top of their list, have become aware of these different types of services by attending them. So you can see that some of these polls here, and some of these should be updated, show some great numbers. They've only risen from there. So if you build it, they will come. That's a most definite fact. Beware of greenwashing, and this is a good slide. And the term green shouldn't equate to the dollar sign. And unfortunately, with anything new, you get a lot of people who may get involved for some of the wrong reasons. And consumers are pretty smart, and they can understand the difference between somebody who knows what they're doing and someone who does not know what they're doing. So really, when you're out there looking, be very wary of false promises. You have to be sure, and part of the Green Burial Council's commitment to the consumer and the provider is to set these standards that people have to contractually agree to protect the integrity. So, buyer beware. Just be be careful when you're looking into these things, and do your homework, because some people will most certainly make false representations. And if they are a Green Burial Council certified provider or product provider, you can be sure that they've had to meet our requirements to become so. There's an example of different types of burial containers. Again, to each his own. More examples of that. Homemade. Well, yeah, this is an interesting slide. Solutions to invented problems. What ends up happening, again, is that people try to become a little more creative than necessary. There are some very blue sky thinkers out there who believe that maybe a product could possibly enhance the decomposition process, or instead of becoming a tree naturally, maybe they could create a product that would enhance or help that along. But again, I would leave that up to the consumers. Are pretty savvy, and I can tell you that a lot of the things out there that really seem a bit outlandish, they are, and they don't last very long. So we have a choice. We can say to ourselves, would I like to be in a place that maybe economically will not be viable? And that's an important thing to know, because the maintenance of a traditional cemetery can be very, very costly. And over time, that only grows. And as space becomes limited, that becomes a very large factor in the lifespan of that particular place. Or would I like to go to a place that not only serves the purpose of allowing yourself to become part of something greater, but also serves the community in a very beneficial way to create a green space, a recreational space, and to steward, to individuals and generations to come. I think that that's the most important thing. That in itself makes it a very logical choice. So as a call to action, I encourage everybody on this call to visit the Green Burial Council website, peruse the pages, look at all that we have to offer concerning the educational information and downloadable documents that you can use, access those tools. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Yes. So I apologize for that. So, go to the website, look at that, read about all the things that you can do. Reach out to your local community, try to inspire them, to get them involved, get them in touch with us. If you have a local cemeterian that you think may be a good fit, tell them to give us a call, and we'll talk to them about the merits of natural burial. And also sign up for the Green Burial Council newsletter. Stay on top of what's happening. It's free of charge, and it's a great little piece of information you'll receive, and you'll be happy to see it every month. And it'll keep you abreast of all the changes and all the great things that are happening. So you can find more information. Like I said, I think you should go to the website and take care of all of that. Look at what we have to offer. You can see here there's a nice list of all kinds of things that you can look into to answer some of the questions you may have. And again, reach out to us personally. We would love to talk to you and help inspire you to help us further the movement. So I think that's got it fairly well covered. I do apologize, everyone. I had to do this off of my phone, so I tried to do the best I possibly could. So, you know, follow us on Facebook, sign up for our newsletter, become an active participant, and let's talk a little bit now. You know, I know that there was a lot of questions that came through. Let's talk about, you know, how we can better inform you and also inspire Wilka and your community to try to create one of the first international locations, you know, in Mexico and in Latin America that might be a Green Burial Council certified provider.
Yes, thank you, Ed. There are a few questions that we will cover, and I just want to, you know, add that yes, the Elisabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in Central Mexico is currently working to gather all the information with the guidance of Ed and the Green Burial Council so that we can best prepare for our first green burial grounds, which will be in our region right here in San Miguel de Allende. And so we are currently, our team is currently gathering all the information so that we can prepare the plan that can be a replicable plan that then we share with different communities across the Republic, and so that we can answer specific questions about how this applies in Mexico. We will have those answers very soon, but in the meantime, we're getting a general overview. And so let's see about, it has been addressed on the chat that the PowerPoint is available on the Green Burial Council website, so you can download it there. There's a question from Asha. In natural burial, is the family allowed to lay the body in the ground with objects that are gifts for the body? Ed.
Okay, Asha, you know what? That's a very good question. And this is exactly what I tell all of my customers. You most absolutely certainly can do so, as long as it's a biodegradable type of product or material. So, you know, I have individuals who do leave things with their loved ones, and that's what we encourage, and that's what we require of them when it comes to commemorating or honoring them with something in the actual gravesite itself.
Thank you. A question from Daryl. Can you talk about how the body needs to be handled at the point of death and before reaching the green cemetery?
Sure, absolutely. So this is probably one of the most important things that everybody on this call needs to know. If you are interested in natural burial, pre-arranging your actual funeral is very important, or at least allowing your family members to know what you want. So when someone passes away, you know, they don't have to go to a funeral home, as we all know. Certainly they can be kept at home. The family can, you know, keep someone refrigerated. They can use what's called a death doula. There are individuals, for instance, there's an organization called the National Home Funeral Alliance, where they provide instruction to families, or they can provide guidance on how to care for a deceased individual at their home. But when somebody passes, they need to either be kept at home refrigerated or taken to a funeral home facility and kept under refrigeration. And really the biggest requirement at that point in time is, and that refrigeration is kept until they are actually brought to the cemetery itself. You can help wash your loved one, casket your loved one. You can do anything that you choose to do. There's no restrictions concerning that, but first and foremost, the body temperature is the most important thing. So if you're considering it a home funeral, go to the National Home Funeral Alliance website and look at that. And if you're going to use the services of a funeral director, be sure to tell them what you want. And you might find that some of them will say to you, it can't be done. Please don't listen to that, because that's not the truth. Just have them reach out to us as well. But you have to let your wishes be known so things are handled correctly.
Thank you. I want to add that we are also, the Elisabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in Central Mexico is also working on gathering all the information for supporting natural home funerals. And so this is also something that we're working on and that we will hopefully be able to provide very soon. Okay, next question from Francoise. Which countries have been most responsive to green burial movement?
That's a good question. What I would point to is, believe it or not, that the movement really truly started in England back in the 1990s. They started probably, I think around 1992 might have been their very first one, and now there are over 250 in operation in that country alone. But what I can tell you is, believe it or not, it's happening everywhere. People just maybe they don't use the word or the term natural burial. They may just call it simple burial or just burial itself. America really is the #1 country that practices what we consider traditional burial, which is not very traditional to countries outside of America, or the United States, I should say. So England kind of started the movement, but it's always been here, and it's being done everywhere. I think it's just teaching people the environmental effects of, what we do and how we can empower the families to be part of the process.
Thank you. A question from Matt. Which overall costs being lower than traditional burial could green burial, with overall cost being lower than traditional burial, could green burial be a good option for municipalities who regularly need to handle human remains, such as the homeless population?
You know what? That's a good question, Matt. And the irony of the situation is that's actually being practiced now. That's exactly what individuals who are indigent or homeless, that's how their burials are handled. Believe it or not, municipalities, are the last stop if they cannot locate a loved one, and they typically are not embalmed. Now, they may not be in a biodegradable burial container or shroud. Unfortunately, a lot of those individuals may go into like a Tyvek body bag. I think really the best thing we could do as an organization and as socially is to maybe reach out to our town fathers or to the individuals who operate and run these different programs and let them know about the biodegradable options. But it's being done on a regular basis as we speak.
Thank you. Andrea asks, what is the problem with body in a bag and making a tree?
You know what? There's absolutely no problem with that. I can tell you a couple different ways that it's done, just so you have a good understanding. If an individual wants to be memorialized with a tree and they're getting a full body burial, that is most certainly not a problem. It's very easily attainable. They can be in a shroud or in a pine box for that, or any type of gradable container, and a tree planted on top. And now there are some new cremation programs that I would like to enlighten everyone about that, are reforesting different forests that maybe were depleted. There are coral reef programs that are in effect right now that are helping restore coral reef systems, and they're using the cremated remains in different processes. As far as a tree is concerned, the cremated remains are mixed in the soil and the tree is planted. Now, a lot of people would say, you just had a slide on there that says cremation is not very green. What we're looking for is a carbon offset to that carbon footprint. So there's a lot of merit in these new programs. And a lot of people are memorializing their loved ones who have passed away decades prior and have sat on a fireplace mantle, and they've always wanted that special place for them, and they found it in this.
Thank you. There's a question from Cynthia about the 24-hour association in San Miguel. So Cynthia, the Elisabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation here is collaborating with the Green Burial Council, and so we are the ones who will be talking to to the 24-hour association. And while we're at it, there's a question from Susan about, you know, if I die in San Miguel, is it best to be cremated? And, you know, there are a variety of options, and what we are coming together here to begin to have a conversation about is that we will soon have our first green burial here in San Miguel. So, you know, this is in the works, and as soon as it continues progressing, we will be letting you know, and you can always sign up to our newsletter for the Elisabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in Central Mexico so that you can get the updates on how that's going. So let's see, next question. Oh, yeah, so Susan, I think this conversation we can have later regarding what's going on in Mexico. Marty asks, is there a place on your website where we can see a price comparison between traditional burial versus green burial? I am guessing green option is much less expensive.
You know, yeah, we have information on there to give a general idea. You know, obviously, supply and demand and location has a lot to do with that. A lot of people would initially think that green burial means inexpensive burial. It most certainly is much cheaper, but it really depends on the person providing it and what their charges may be. What I can tell you from my experience, just so you can have a price comparison, for instance, in my location that I have in Half Moon Bay, California, a typical burial plot there in the San Francisco Bay Area is astronomically expensive. As much as $25,000 for a burial plot, which is insanity. We have burial plots for $2,500, and you can see the Pacific Ocean. A concrete vault might cost you $1,000 or $1,500. There is no vault required. A grave opening might cost you another $1,500 on top of that. So as you can see, the greatest savings with a natural burial, of course, there's going to be savings on the plot typically, but not always, just because the operator may charge dependent on where it's at, but is the savings on a lot of the services and products that are provided. So if you were to come to my facility, you could have a full natural burial with a grave opening for as little as $4,000. And you may pay $35,000 at the cemetery a couple miles away. That's an extreme example. Here in New Jersey at my facility, you would spend $3,500 and you would probably spend about $8,000 somewhere else. So there's considerable savings, but it's all going to vary depending on where you're at regionally to what the cost would be.
Thank you. So Wendy, who is our colleague in Ajijic, and who is an expert in many of these matters in Mexico, answers to Susan's question that if you plan to be buried outside of Mexico or in another state in Mexico, your body must be embalmed in order to travel. And so that's just to address Susan's question about what's going on in Mexico. Gretchen mentions that home funeral guides in the States often use dry ice. Yes. Jarell Commons, cremation's huge advantage. It doesn't take valuable earth space. Do you have any comment in response to that, Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the biggest misconceptions out there is that there are just cemeteries sprawling, creating giant spaces that are eating up valuable resources. That couldn't be further from the truth. You know, you're not taking up valuable earth space. What you're doing is you're creating an environment that nurtures the earth. Cremation, unfortunately, does have a pretty large carbon footprint. Why not become part of a conservation effort with a natural burial and nurture nature with, you know, with what your body has to offer? So we are not running out of cemetery land, and we're certainly not taking up the rest of the earth. You know, people who live in urban settings a lot of times sometimes believe this because they don't realize how absolutely wild the earth actually is. The United States is about 80% wild. People who live in the cities don't understand that. So look at the environmental impacts, and I think allow that to be your guiding force. And the one thing, if I can comment real quickly, I see the one about being buried outside of Mexico or another state in Mexico where your body must be embalmed in order to travel. And I could be wrong myself, unless Mexican law is quite different than North America or United States law or even other foreign countries. That's not the case. A lot of people believe that, but it's absolutely not the case. We have people float into our facilities all the time from foreign countries. And it's all about the airline and how the body is handled. But we've never had an instance where there was, unless it was not refrigerated, that it had to be embalmed. So I would check into Mexican law on that, but I don't believe that I would be hard pressed to believe that's true.
Thank you. I wanted to expand on the question about land. Because it's my understanding that, especially when we're dealing with green burial for conservation of land, designating those lands for green burial in connection with conservation makes them preserved in perpetuity, for which then we could jump to the conclusion that there is a purpose of protecting the land and of creating a legacy for future generations. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. When you create a burial ground or a burial space, Wilka, you just hit it right on the head. You create a space that can never be changed. You have protected that space forever. And that's pretty important. So you could take a very environmentally sensitive area and dedicate it as cemetery land and maybe only develop a very small portion of it. But, as a conservation cemetery, you would be protecting that space forever. And that's pretty important. So it is a very good tool when it comes to that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you. This is a big motivator for us. So Kristen says, this is such a beautiful option. I never really cared for the traditional burial here in the US. I know this seems obvious, but it's just so natural. I don't know if there's... there's a question from Andrea, just so that I will address it, that do we have a piece of land in mind? Yes, we have landowners for this in San Miguel. And Carol Turner asks, the casket reminded me, no, sorry, I don't know why I'm reading wrong. Seemed like a good local solution. Any problems with that?
I can touch on some products if people would like to understand how they work. No, the basket itself is not a problem. This is what I tell my consumer all the time. Everything degrades differently. So a pine box can degrade rapidly if you've got a high water table or a lot of moisture. Bamboo, seagrass, wicker, any of those things are acceptable. The seagrass baskets and the bamboo baskets, they degrade rapidly. They collapse rapidly. The irony of the situation is, believe it or not, and in particular, if you're in an arid climate, is that without a doubt the strongest biodegradable burial container that exists is the rattan or the willow. And the reason I make mention of this is some people want to go back to nature quickly. And they want little evidence of a burial taking place. So if you visit my preserves, you'll walk through the forest and you'll walk by grave sites, you'll never know they're there. But if an individual chooses, let's say, for instance, a willow, which is quite beautiful, I always explain to the family that sometimes it takes up to 3 to 5 years for that particular container to collapse. So when you do your homework on what you're looking to buy, look into, how quickly it may degrade, see if you can find out information about that. And that's only just a word to the wise, because if you're looking for something or the family's looking for something to look very natural, it's important to know these things.
Thank you. I've also had some conversations with conservation cemetery, people who work in conservation cemeteries. And I've heard several comments around, you know, this sort of maybe notion that may not be realistic about how green burial, especially for land conservation or reforestation, is burying a body and planting a tree on top of it. That it's really more about creating an environment that will sustain an ecosystem. And so I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I think that the most interesting thing about this, and the one thing that everyone has to understand, is nature is really, it's a really funny thing in the sense that it repairs itself so quickly. And when I say that, this is what I mean. You don't have to plant a forest to create an ecosystem, most certainly. What you need to do is, in particular, if you're working actively in a forest that already exists, if you're trying to reestablish one, it's different. But if you're working in one that exists, nurture the plant systems and nurture the things that that exist there now, and take care when you excavate the gravesite, and be sure to replant those plants and all those things, those native grasses, because you would be absolutely amazed at how they, in their native environment, take root again and thrive after the actual burial itself. So you're not scarring it, you're not damaging it, you're and don't try to reinvent the wheel in the sense of things that maybe don't have a place there, or don't need to be there. If you have a particular piece of property that, let's say, for instance, beautiful old growth oak forest, and it was reestablish that, but allow nature to do it on its own. Don't try to go in and say, we're going to plant 10,000 trees in this particular area, because you would be absolutely astonished at how quickly nature takes hold.
Great, thank you. Here's another question from Johanna. Can we find a list of sites in the US on your website? I'm assuming she means, I'm not sure if she means websites or green burial sites. I assume it's green burial sites. Johanna, if you can clarify on the chat box, please. But I think that's what she means. Is there a list of green burial sites in the United States?
Absolutely. Yes, go to our website and you'll be able to see all of our certified providers. It actually lists them by state. And then, of course, we'll have our Canadian providers there as well. And then hopefully very soon in the future, we'll have your community space on there. But yes, go on there and you can see all the cemeteries and you can see all of the funeral professionals that are certified with their contact information.
Great, thank you. There's a question from Desmond. I'm a new funeral pre-arranger. I started right as the COVID hit. How has the pandemic affected consumers, and how has the pandemic affected your observation of the mortality conversation?
Well, I think that's a wonderful question to ask, because I can tell you this. It's amazing how many people have come out, and because they're sitting at home, under quarantine, or, they're thinking about their mortality and saying to themselves, tomorrow's never promised. So it's opened the eyes of lots of people. I tell you, there's never going to be a more exciting time than the next couple of years with what we do, meaning that people are becoming much more open to talk about their mortality and their death. And it opened up a floodgate for us concerning the consumer, saying, you know what, I could catch COVID and pass away next week and my family would not know what I wanted. And this is what I want, and I want to take care of it now. So there really has been an uptick in sales and in opportunity and growth. I mean, like I've never seen. It's maybe one of the the most fortunate things to come out of such an unfortunate circumstance is the ability for people to reflect on their own mortality now and make these really important decisions. So it's incredible what's happening. People are, I had customers, believe it or not, that I met 10 years ago who kept my information, but nobody really wants to, to think or talk about it, and they said, you know what, let's get it done. So it's a very opportune time for everyone, not only business-wise, but growth-wise, to take a look at natural burial, what it has to offer, and to embrace the concept and provide it to the consumer.
Yeah, I would add that, the reason why the Elisabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in Central Mexico responded so strongly to addressing the green burial for reforestation issue really came out of the conversations that were suddenly happening around mortality and coming from places and people who originally may not have wanted to consider it. There is definitely a very evident, way in which COVID has brought up this, the reality of mortality, our vulnerability, and all of the issues that the death industry and the health systems are currently, healthcare systems are currently facing. And so I think this has been a great opportunity for our reconsideration of what is not working and what could work, not just for us now, but for our future generations. And then, as a Death Cafe host, I've also seen a huge upsurge in interest and requests for joining Death Cafe meetings. And so it really seems that now is a time when globally we are more sensitive, more like waking up to the importance of having these conversations. And one of the main topics that we are discussing is options for ritual, for home funeral, for green burial, these kinds of things. So let's see, comment from Daryl. A list of Green Burial Council certified providers, funeral homes, products, and burial grounds is listed under the Find a Provider tab on the website. Asha asks, in your experience, what do you find is the effect on family members through the green burial process, emotionally, or in the grieving process or healing?
Well, I appreciate you asking that question, because there are certain things that we should talk about so people have a really understanding of natural burial and what it means to the families. It has a very profound effect to empower an individual and allow them to grieve in a way that they can care for their loved one as they would care for them in life. There are no words. To have grief-stricken families come to you at the worst time and find solace in the fact that they know that they're able to provide this general return and give that individual the final send-off and celebration they deserve. It's unreal. That's the major component in natural burial for your community in particular. For them to be able to arrive at the facility, to be able to carry their loved one to that grave, to be able to place them there, to be able to lower them down, to be able to backfill that grave, be able to speak. Maybe they're angry, maybe they're sad, maybe they'll laugh. And after the entire process, for them to look at you with a genuine smile on their face and say thank you, that says it all. You have changed not only their lives, but the lives that surround them, and given them a greater appreciation of the life that was lived and their own individual life and their relationship with that individual that they've just helped, care for. There's nothing like it. Until you actually experience it, you'll never truly understand it. I mean, you can watch videos and things like that, but for you to be able to offer this in your community, you're offering something so special. The thought of being able to go back later and reflect and be able to maybe possibly walk the trails or or be surrounded by the living and life itself gives such a feeling. You know, that individual who passed away truly never passes away as long as you live and you continue to see, because they see through you, through the memory. So it is probably one of the most giving things you could ever do, not only to the family, but for the loved one, but for yourself. So it's incredible. And people come in, like I said, grief-stricken, and they're not looking to leave. They process it on their own time. And when they do leave, you can see the weight of the world has been lifted from their shoulders. And when I see them in the future, the most beautiful part of it is I say them, I get, you know, in your community will be the same. You will get to know people by their first name because it's such an intimate experience. Everyone is so different, but so profound. And you'll find them walking the trails or enjoying the property, not standing at the gravesite, grieving. Of course, they'll pay their respect, but they'll be somewhere on the property and they'll give you a big wave or a big smile. And that's what makes it all the better, knowing, you know, what a good thing you're doing.
Thank you. And Asha says, thank you for such an eloquent and moving response. I would like to add that here in Mexico already, our indigenous traditions and, you know, the original peoples, as we continue, one of the practices is to honor the land and honor those who came before, and to offer gratitude and offerings to everything that happened before that allows us to be here today. And so one of the many reasons why, you know, green burial is so natural, it's what we did before, but also it's a way in which we can bridge our traditions from the past and what we have been able to achieve now, and create a third option that is in harmony with nature and with, you know, our advances in civilization. Is that with green burial, we have the opportunity to build a legacy that goes back to the land and that will allow for the future generations to enjoy it. But also a space, as Ed was talking about, you know, these grounds that are a space to honor not just the one loved one of the survivors that remain, but just of all of the people who came before us. And so it kind of comes back to that original tradition of honoring everything that came before. And so part of our interest with, I mean, like I said, there's so many good reasons why this is of importance to us, is also that our traditions can be,
and we have to be the ones that lead by example. And I hope that the Green Burial Council can help Wilka and her organization create that space in her community, because it's going to be that special, and you're really going to be able to lead the charge in Latin America by leading by example and by taking that first step, showing people that, you know, this is not a scary thing. This is really just going back to tradition and roots. And, you know, it's going to really make it's going to put that particular project in a very special place when it comes to globally how this progresses. So the nice thing about that is not that it's something that people need, but to know that your particular project could help lead the way, that's a pretty special thing. So I hope we can be part of that. I hope we can help you create that space. And I hope we can, you know, help you with your community understand what it is, how it's done, and how it can impact your society on a whole.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed a bunch because of an internet connection. So we have a little less than 10 minutes left. There's a question from Desmond about the process of becoming a practitioner. And I just want to say very quickly that please stay in touch with us at the Elisabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in Central Mexico, so that we can continue this conversation. And if you are interested and feel called to action, that means to actually work toward making this a possibility sooner for us, please let us know. And so I'll hand it back to Ed, and then we will close very soon.
Okay, so if you want to become a practitioner, so I'm not sure if that's for a cemeterian or funeral director, but I'll touch on both. Obviously, if you want to, be a funeral director, then mortuary school and things like that would be the first step. You can become involved with the National Home Funeral Alliance, which is based in the United States, but I know that you could find, they would certainly assist you with understanding how to become a death doula or something like that. But to become a practitioner when it comes to a cemetery itself, that could be a tad bit trickier. Really has a lot to do with zoning and what's permissible by the local municipality or the government. But if you wanted to initiate the process, there has to be processes in place in your local community concerning that, meaning, different applications and different requirements of the applicant to, to be able to provide these services. I will tell you this, in North America, or not North America, but I should say United States, it's pretty difficult to create a new space. And I'm sorry to say that. I hope that changes. They don't make it very applicant friendly. It's very costly. But what I can tell you is that if you can reclaim a former burial ground or a former space that maybe was neglected and care for it in a way that you can bring the community back to it, that could be your best possible scenario to actually practicing what we're doing in a really timely manner. And the beauty of that is you're giving back to the community by reclaiming and caring for something that maybe otherwise was neglected or disregarded. So I hope that helps. And most certainly go talk to your local governmental agencies and see what would be required of you to do so.
And I'd just like to reiterate too, if anybody wants to do a talk at a library or a women's group or one of your community groups, please, at the Green Burial Council website, there's a lot of material there. The PowerPoint presentation is there. There's things you can download and print off to hand out, and just educating your community and generating the interest so that people are asking their cemeteries and they're inquiring, and the more the public does that, the more we can push the movement forward. So if anybody is inspired to do a talk and needs a little assistance or anything like that, it's there on the website. And if you have any questions and message to the website, it's going to come to me. So I'll answer and help anybody who's trying to make something happen.
Thank you, Gretchen. So I want to thank Ed and Gretchen and everyone from the Green Burial Council who have been so helpful and so approachable, and we feel so honored to be able to collaborate and to push the movement forward. Not just in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, but internationally. And so we are all working together towards that goal that is beyond our individual interests, but that spans, across the globe for the benefit of everyone. And let's see. Yeah, I just want to say I'm so grateful for every single person who is here today. I am grateful that you answered your own call to find out more, and hopefully you can bring this conversation to your family and your communities in whatever form. And so please, if there are any other questions that come up, please reach out to us. We can have more conversations. We want to have more conversations. And again, if you're feeling called to action, please contact us so that we can find the ways that you could be a part of this in a more active way. I also want to thank Jessica and Hanosh, who have been very supportive in making this event happen. This is part of our team, and Asha and Felicitas from our Advisory Council of the foundation. And Ed, I don't know if you have any closing words.
I just want to thank everybody for attending today, and the best thing you can possibly do is talk to others about it. You know, create conversations surrounding it. You know, it's a funny thing when you talk about death and dying and things like that. People at first are a little put off, or they don't understand. But when you tell them about this process and what's involved, usually, you know, typically the conversation changes and it's very intriguing. So do your part. You know, spread the word, and please do, like Wilka had said, reach out to us for anything you may need. And we hope to be able to inspire your community to create this space, and hope to be part of that creation. And I just thank you again for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
I think you're somewhere in there.
Thank you.
Yay.
You're welcome. Bye-bye now.
Bye.